Most people think being a good cat owner is about the grand gestures, the boutique treats, the 6-foot climbing tower, the subscription box toys. The lab disagrees. There are 3 quiet behaviors already happening in your house that have actually been tested under controlled conditions that register in your cat's brain as attachment and safety, and that most people misread completely. 3, not 7. I went looking for more, and I'll tell you at the end what happened. 1. Return the slow blink. Your cat looks at you across the room, narrows their eyes, and closes them slowly. Most people read this as a cat falling asleep. It isn't. In 2020, a team of psychologists at the universities of Sussex and Portsmouth, Tasman Humphrey, Karen McComb, and their colleagues, published a study in Scientific Reports that was the first to test this experimentally. They ran 2 experiments. In the first, owners sat in a room with their cat and slow blinked at them. And this was compared against the owner simply being present without interacting. The cats narrowed their eyes back significantly more when the human did it first. The second experiment is the one that matters. An experimenter the cat had never met either slow blinked at it or held a neutral face, then extended a flat hand toward the cat. After the slow blink, the cats were more likely to approach that stranger's hand. Now, I want to be precise about what this study did and didn't do. It measured behavior, eye movements, approach. It did not scan anyone's brain, and it did not measure a single hormone. Anybody telling you that a slow blink has been shown to release something in your cat's bloodstream is describing a study that does not exist. What makes this finding stranger is a possibility the researchers themselves raise. This may not be an ancient signal at all. Cats may have learned it. Learned that when they narrow their eyes at a human, the human softens, stays, gets friendlier. Which would mean the slow blink is not your cat telling you something. It is your cat having trained you, and then repeating what works. And there is a follow-up study that gives this some weight. The same group filmed cats in a rehoming center and found that the cats who slow blinked were, on average, adopted faster. It is a correlation, not a cause, and the sample was small. But sit with it anyway. In a shelter full of cats, the ones who make that face go home sooner. So when your cat does it, narrow your eyes as though you were smiling. Close them for a second or 2, then look away, and don't stare. It's worth understanding why, because the reason is not etiquette. Across an enormous range of species, cats, dogs, primates, us, a direct, unblinking gaze from a large animal is one of the oldest predatory signals there is. Eyes locked, face still, body oriented at you. Nothing that intends you well looks at you like that for very long. Which means the slow blink is not the opposite of a stare. It is the demolition of one. To close your eyes at something is to announce, in the plainest available language, that you are not hunting it. Your cat is not being affectionate at you. Your cat is standing down and inviting you to do the same. But everything in that study was measured from the outside. Eyes narrowing, a paw stepping forward, behavior. The next one is different. With the next one, researchers got inside the signal itself, took it apart, and found something hiding in there. 2. Learn to hear the cry inside the purr. You know the difference between the purr your cat makes on your lap at midnight and the purr they make at 6 a.m. standing on your sternum. One of them makes you feel good, the other one gets you out of bed. In 2009, Karen McComb and colleagues at Sussex published a paper in Current Biology with one of the great titles in animal science, The Cry Embedded Within the Purr. They recorded cats purring in 2 contests, contentment and actively soliciting food, and played the recordings to people at matched volume. Listeners rated the solicitation purrs as more urgent and as less pleasant. That held even for people who had never owned a cat. Then they looked at the acoustics and found it. Buried inside the low rumble of the purr is a high-frequency voiced component, something like a cry or a meow. Its frequency peak sits between 220 and 520 hertz, averaging around 380. That number is not a neutral fact. Your cat is running 2 frequencies at once. One of them says everything is fine. The other one is standing on a part of your hearing you cannot switch off. And here is the experiment that makes this more than a curiosity, and it is the part everyone leaves out. They took the solicitation purrs and resynthesized them, stripping out that one embedded component and changing nothing else. Then they played them again. The urgency evaporated. That is not a correlation. That is a knob, and they turned it. The cry is doing the work. Your cat has folded a distress call into a sound that also says everything is fine, and the two arrive at your ear simultaneously, and you get up. The researchers' interpretation is that this exploits a sensitivity mammals have to acoustic cues associated with caring for offspring, which is a careful sentence and worth keeping careful. It does not mean your cat is imitating a human baby. It means the sound lands somewhere old. One more finding, and it cuts against the tidy version. Cat owners identified the solicitation purrs more accurately than non-owners did, meaning this is partly learned. Your ear was trained by your cat. So, listen for it. You can hear the difference once you know it's there. And once you can, stop treating the two purrs as one thing. The lap purr wants nothing from you. The other one is a request with a deadline attached, and if you answer it the same way every time, food, immediately, no questions, you are not being kind, you are training the frequency. And if the urgent purr becomes constant, or appears in a cat who never used it before, that is not a manners problem. That is a cat asking for something, and it is worth finding out what. So, a signal we can watch, a sound we can dismantle. Both of those are your cat doing something to you. 3. Understand what you actually are to them. For years, the standard line was that cats don't really care whether you're there. Solitary, aloof, not built for attachment. In 2019, Kristen Vitale, Alexandra Benke, and Monique Udell at Oregon State University's Human-Animal Interaction Lab published a study in Current Biology that should have ended that. The method they used was not designed for cats. It was designed in the 1970s for human infants. The secure base test came out of developmental psychology, from work on how babies use a parent as a base of operations, a fixed point they venture out from and return to when the world gets alarming. Running it on cats was, on the face of it, faintly ridiculous. That is the whole reason the result matters. The test does not ask whether the animal likes you. It asks whether the animal uses you. Cat and owner sit in an unfamiliar room. The owner leaves. The owner comes back. 2 minutes, and everything hangs on those 2 minutes. Because what gets classified is not the leaving, it is what the cat does when you return. Of the 70 kittens whose behavior could be classified, 64, the Cree%, were categorized as securely attached. They greeted the owner and then went back to exploring the room, the owner functioning as a base to work from. The remaining 35.7% were insecure, either clinging or avoiding. Then they tested 38 adult cats, 1 year and older. 65, 8% secure. 34, 2% insecure. Look at those two numbers next to each other. 64.3, 65.8. Kittens and adults, separated by a year or more of life, of moving house, of new people, of whatever a cat's year contains. And the proportions land within 1.5% of each other. That is not a coincidence. That is a trait that was set early and then did not move. Then they did the thing that makes this study worth its citation. They put a group of kittens through 6 weeks of socialization and training, and they retested them. The attachment styles barely moved. Think about what that implies. Not that your cat's bond with you is fragile and needs constant maintenance. The opposite. Once it forms, it appears to be a stable feature of that animal. It is not a scoreboard you can run up with a better toy, and it is not a thing you lose because you had a bad week. The honest limit on this. The secure base test classifies behavior at reunion. It is not a stress measurement. Nobody drew blood. When you read that your presence lowers your cat's cortisol, that specific claim is not what this study shows. So when you come home, sit down. Let them come to you. You are not entertainment. You're the fixed point they orient from, and the research says you already are one, whether or not you did anything clever this evening. Which also means the reunion is the only part of the day the test was ever measuring. Not the toy, not the treat. The 30 seconds after the door opens, when you either become a fixed point or a source of noise. Here's the thing about all three of these. There's no equipment, no protocol, no overhaul. A blink returned. A sound recognized. A moment of sitting still. Now, I promised to tell you what happened when I went looking for more. I started this with 7. There is a lot of confident writing out there about what needing means, and about what happens in a cat's brain when they sleep on your chest, and about the exact evolutionary meaning of a quivering tail. I went to find the studies. 4 of them do not exist, so this video has 3. Your cat's bond with you is written in behavior we can measure and sounds we can take apart in a lab. And everything I couldn't stand behind, I cut. If that's the kind of thing you want more of, subscribe. And tell me in the comments which of these 3 your cat does, and which one you'd been reading wrong.